Hi, here's a request video from I think it was Andrew, my African American brother from the other mother in Washington D.C. He wanted to know what I thought about time travel. I think I've done a bunch of videos about time travel in the past. But it's good to do a video. If anybody asks me to do a video and it's something I've already done, I'll do it again because the video changes and I change and everything. It's worth doing updates of different videos as you move along. Andrew wanted me to do a video about time travel. I don't know if this video is going to be so much a video about time travel as it's a video about like history, studying history, because like studying history is the closest thing we can get to time travel, so it is a time travel subject. But I think it does tie into actual physical time travel, or at least imagining other times and spaces. So I'll give you an example. Let me take you, like, time travel can also be parallel universe travel. Because like if you wanted to talk about current Atlantis in a parallel universe where Atlantis never fell, like, is that time travel? Because it's forward in time from a past that we have in common. So it has a lot to do with time. So, and I guess future, explain what the future is like. So let me explain to you Atlantis, current Atlantis, or you could call it future Atlantis from the past, or current Atlantis in a parallel universe. But an Atlantis that never fell. Atlantis is an island that's 550 kilometers by 350 kilometers with a big northern bay that comes from the north. And the capital city is just about 13 kilometers inland. I think the wall is only like a couple of kilometers inland or whatever from the beach. And so the capital is maybe like 10 kilometers in from the wall. So the wall would be like 3 kilometers in from the sea. So the capital, central capital is like 13 kilometers from the sea. And it had the mountains with the 1600 kilometer winding, which is 10,000 stadia, winding canal from Andros Island. Andros Island was the mountains of Atlantis. And and then goes into the city. So it was always like the water flowing through the city was fresh because it was part of the canal from the mountains and then dumped out into the sea. I don't know if they could swim in it or anything, but see, there were there would have been other cities too. And so what would they, if they would have at a more technologically advanced situation? I'm going to picture something that's even, where if they're at a situation now, it's even more technologically advanced than we are. And so what's the next level of civilization in terms of infrastructure? I think it's giant buildings acting as cities. Cities are just turned into giant buildings because they're just so dense. They're densely enough packed that you might as well just make a big building out of it. And in the future, we will have situations like that, giant caves that turn into giant cities. Because in about 50 years, we're going to run out of oil. And we're going to have to, hopefully by then, we will have figured out how to get energy from solar, hydroelectric, rivers, tidal energy, geothermal energy, wind energy will provide us enough energy to keep going on as a civilization. But the oil will be used for plastics, the oil that we still have. But because we will have been spent like 150 years of just constant extraction of oil from the core, we're going to have these giant underground chasms. And then, so it won't take us long to realize that that's like halfway or most of the way built, underground cities for us. So all we have to do is move down there and build them up as cities, for even people to live in, who don't mind not going outside that much, or it could be used for offices or storage, or you could use them as underwater reservoirs for water. But cities too. But it's way more fun to live in big buildings. And so one architecture of the future is the big ass building, and the first one of those, the most logical one, is the Exceed 4000. They have some other buildings that are bigger. Like there's one called the something dome that's like 35,000 feet, but those are like pipe dreams. But the Exceed 4000 is it's a concept building, but it's built on a serious premise, and they actually do seriously think about building it. The Japanese put it together, came up with the idea as a way to make Tokyo bigger, because Tokyo's filled up. It's the biggest city in the world, but it mainly by size. It was like 20 or 30 million or something. It's biggest in population, and I think biggest by size. But if the Japanese had their way, it would look like New York or Hong Kong. The reason it doesn't is because it's right next to the bay, and it's built on clay and sand, and they can't build those giant buildings because they would collapse. So they figured maybe they could build their giant building in the bay, and they could use that bay. They have this huge bay. It's like free real estate that they'd like to fill up with water, maybe, and like how or with sand, like how the Dutch reclaim the sea. But so they came up with the idea of the Exceed 4000 building, which is a 4,000 meter high building, 4 kilometers high, 13,148 feet. And it's shaped like a top, like an upside down top that you would spin, it shaped like the Eiffel Tower, kind of. It's like this. It's like the Eiffel Tower, like a stocky Eiffel Tower. And it starts out kind of like with a very moderate incline, but then at the top it's almost vertical. And like probably vertical enough, yeah, if you built a little bit of a walk out of it, you could base jump off of it. And so it revolutionizes. This is like you asking for time travel. This is actual future. I'm describing the future. It revolutionizes travel. I Google Earthed it. You can download it, and I'll make YouTube videos of it here whenever I get around to it. But it makes travel free and fast because the city is covered in. It's so big; it's the size of a mountain. It's taller than Mount Fuji. It's covered in solar panels, and it's also really high, so it can get solar energy. It can get wind energy from the top. It rains a lot, and it has a river that goes around the edge, and it maybe even getting a little bit of hydroelectric. I don't know, but self-sufficient building as far as energy goes, which allows it to. It's a my version of the Exceed 4000, the one that the Japanese say, because they say 1 million people can live in it. They have the whole middle part of it built up to the top, but I have in my version, I assume they can make it strong enough without needing that middle to support it. The steel's strong enough or plastic strong enough to support its weight just from the outside. So the inside of it is basically this big giant area of open space that it's so you can. On the bottom, I created all of the skyscrapers of New York. So you could put New York inside of it. So a regular city on the floor, and then it's like surrounded by this hollow building, and so you can use its energy that it has to. And not even that much energy, kind of like the principle of an elevator with these giant counterbalance weights. It brings these gliders up to the top all the time. And once you get the glider to the top, if it starts its flight at 13,148 feet, that glider could fly like 20 kilometers in any direction. So instead of having airplanes that take you around the island, or buses or trains and automobiles or even bikes, people do bikes, but you can actually fly airplane around the entire island without using any energy at all, because people just jump in these gliders and they fly from the top all the way down to the next one. And then if they want to go all the way across the city, they'd fly to the next, because these buildings, because they have a bunch of Exceed 4000s around, it's not just one. And they're spaced exactly 20 kilometers apart. So they're spaced apart perfectly so that you could just barely fly from one to the other. If you start at the top of one, by the time you get to the other, that's where you're landing. So to get across the island, you just glide from one building to the next. You take your elevator to the top of that building, jump on a glider, and then fly that glider to the next. And or you could do it with wingsuits. Wingsuiters can fly on their own that way. And wingsuiters can also fly around the inside of the building. Jumping, because there's a hole in the middle, you jump in the hole and then fly around. And it has a circular waterfall at the top that come from the river from the top. It goes to about a third of the way up, and then it has a spiral river. The river spirally goes out from the middle to the outside. So that's aligned with a road, so you can just ride a road from the middle all the way out to the outer edges without stopping one time for a light or turning. You just ride straight and it takes you right out of the city. And everybody can watch the football games or their sports games live, because the ones who live on the inside of the building, all they have to do is look down and they just get their microwaves out or binoculars out, and they can watch it from the telescopes in their houses. And if they wanted to get there physically, They just jump out of their house. It's like base jumping out of their house, and then they can fly to wherever they need to go. It's pretty groovy. And then they tamed animals, so they have all the wild animals, but the wild animals are used there to fight humans for fun, like wrestle them. They get defanged and stuff. But they also would change their personality over years, like the panda bear. The panda bear is basically a Chinese pet. It's been a pet of the Chinese for like 1,000 years. The only reason the panda bear still exists is because the Chinese have been protecting it for a long time. Or at least, protecting their habitat so they can just be cute, cuddly little things. And that's what the other animals will turn into: lions, tigers, bears. They'll turn into our little playthings. And then there will be other cities, future type cities like Jetson Sky City, and that I was going to build. But so, anyways, that's one form of time travel. And why is it time travel? Because if you pay attention to the law of, if you can imagine it, then it exists somewhere, then that's the most obvious thing to imagine. So it's going to be one of the most sure things to exist in the future, just as soon as we can afford to do it. And so that's time travel as far as I'm concerned, in the future. Now, as far as time travel in the past goes, the best way to do time travel in the past is history, recreating history. I recreated. Damn, that thing's going ballsack. Look at that thing. It's like on crack. Do more dancing. Oh, now you're. There you go. Look at the dancing. Man, he was going whack to back. So he was smoking wacky tobacco. So I recreated Rome in the past, and I even screen captured the trips up and down every single one of the roads. I'm going to turn that into a Google Earth video here pretty soon. Not today. I don't feel good. I might add a menu to my book. When I was watching myself traveling up and down all these roads, I also did all the buildings. I did extensive tours throughout all the buildings, man. God, I hope I don't lose that. Because I did screen captures of all the tribes of France, and I deleted it. I lost it. I feel like an idiot. But as I was traveling around Rome, man, I realized how Rome was totally different from modern day world, and it's actually beautiful. I think sometimes we can regress. We can regress in some things. We can get worse at some things. There's lots of lost arts. The lost art of hemp sail building. The lost art of telling historical stories when you don't have a written language, this, that, and the next types of lost art. Technology that they used to do that we don't do anymore. One of the lost arts is city planning. We're in such a rapidly evolving world now that people like to city plan real fast. They design stuff to come up really fast. And even with today's houses, to try to mimic a way that a house used to look when it doesn't even look like that, like putting fake slats on the house and all this fake stuff to make it look like an old log cabin or something when it's just a chunk of plastic. And we also don't make roads totally. I mean, we do try to make roads really straight, but we're not that good at making like the really big boulevards. I don't know, straight forever. We try to do that, but in ancient Rome, they brought that down to a T. You know, like to an art. They would have all of their roads were totally straight because they didn't have cars. You know, you lose some things with technology, and with cars, the roads have to gradually move around so that you don't accidentally crash into somebody's house at the end of the road. But back in those days, they had carriages, so they couldn't go that fast, so there was no problem having a road go forever and then suddenly doing like a 45-degree turn or a 90-degree turn, then going the other way, you know? It was more like you arrive there and then you turn and you go. And it's way more visually aesthetic to have the roads really long because you could see all the way across town and you could see all the roads lining, the buildings lining your road, and all the other roads popping into that road. And then even when you go in the buildings, they were designed the same way with really long hallways that go all the way to the other end. And then when you look down the other hallway, you could see all the way down to the other end. And so it gives you this bird's eye view of everything and helps you understand how big it all is and the layout. And that when you travel around something like that and you can notice all those things, you can gain the insights into how the people used to think in the past. You know, you could picture how people got super ambitious about beauty and making things even more beautiful and more ornate and elaborate because they had all these, you know, ways to display it all with the straight roads where you could see forever and you could see things from forever away. And they had a bunch of towers, you know, that you could even go up and look around to check out the city from the top. Marcus Aurelius Tower, the Tower of Trajan, which was right in the middle of the Library of Trajan. And then you had these lots of other towers. Residential towers got up to probably about 75 meters. The law of ancient Rome was only 3 stories high because they didn't want the buildings to collapse because they were built out of wood. But they would have occasionally some brick structures, and their brick structures could get up to 70 meters because they had one that was that high, a couple of that high, from the Middle Ages, and they probably modeled those off of ancient Rome. We just don't know that. So I built a couple of those, and they were like Rome's version of the Twin Towers. But so yeah, there were places to admire the layout of the city and everything, and that's why they have the idea, oh wow, this is like overwhelmingly beautiful. That's why we're going to call it the Eternal City. Like, this is beyond Italians now. This is for everybody. Yeah. So what was I going to say? I'm starting to pass out. I think I want to take a nap after this. Yeah. So it was an idea. It was ideas that they would have because of it, but I can't remember. So that is time travel. As far as like if you want to do actual physical time travel, you have to do it with baby steps. You can't just invent a time machine. You have to understand what other time periods look like, what they feel like. Then you have to have an idea about it all, like what you prefer for your future. Because if you haven't thought about what you prefer, you'll just go with what's the easiest and choose some dictatorship. But, man, I'm like barely awake. I'm going to have to go take a nap. But, yeah, and then that can eventually, I think, lead into possibly actual time travel. So let me explain to you how time travel works. I've done this video a bunch of times. I watched a video called by the Bashar alien channeler, Daryl Anka. I should see if he has any new videos. That'd be interesting. But he says they're only 300 years in the future. It's like, damn, we really accomplished that much in that period of time. But he's from those grays that were stuck in the caves where they had to repopulate from in vitro fertilization for 50,000 years until they couldn't do it anymore, and then they had to use humans to fix themselves. Then they were provided with a planet, and I think Alpha Centauri or Zeta or something, where they got to hang out and have their human civilization like us. And yeah, but he was traveling back in time, and he was explaining how they do that. They do it with AI quantum. If you combine AI with quantum computing, you can do whatever you want. Because quantum computing is infinite power because it uses it gets all of its information through averages. So there is no such thing as like overloading. You know, like if a regular Cray computer takes like 1 million years to solve a problem, the quantum computer can do it in just a few minutes because it all it has to do is take up the probability, and then it zeroes in on that. But the probability of the way that it figures is always right, and so it doesn't have to actually count each and every one. And so if you couple that with AI, which can self-think and has access to every information ever written down and then can critically think, then it can utilize the principles of the quantum universe. You know how people say that there's a quantum universe with the universe is a hologram and it's just a mathematical equation. What they're talking about, because I read the book, and it was stupid. I read this entire book by this fucking guy, this like Swedish scientist, and it was like one page. Like he has the title, you know, what is quantum computing? He has one page of one chapter where he actually explains it because it's so simple. The rest of the book was just his autobiography. It's really simple, the concept of the quantum universe. So the quantum universe is obviously really big, but you can reduce it because all of the different components of the universe have the same language. So it's kind of like comparing the DNA between a chimpanzee and a human, you know? If you wanted to get the DNA of a human, just take the DNA of your chimpanzee and then just add 4%, and there's your human. And so that's how the quantum universe is. You look at the universe, you have the mathematical code to explain the whole inner workings of like a star and a planet. But if you wanted to add another star to your universe, it doesn't take any extra time or memory because it's constructed the same way as your first star. It's like doing copy-paste. So you just add another star. All you do is add another location. You're like, location B, same as A. And that's it. And so if anything else, if there's a parallel universe, all you have to do is change one thing, like one angle or whatever, and then there's your parallel universe. And you already have a pre-parallel universe because you just pasted it from a copy. So it's actually not all that hard for a quantum computer, an AI quantum computer, to be able to map out the entire universe in its head. Because the quantum can use the averages, and then it uses the just the small tweaks to make something else in the universe, and then you have the AI to piece it all together. Pretty soon you'll have a spaceship that you can hover and fly around, because we already have those. I saw this dude on, what was his name, Sean Ryan, talking about one of these guys who saw one. It was like 800 feet long, 400 feet in circumference or diameter. So if you couple that thing with a supercomputer, you go out into space where you're not, where it's nice and cold, and the quantum computer part can think and not get distracted by like radiation, localized radiation and electromagnetic field of the planet. It maps out the universe, like the entire universe. And because it maps out the entire universe, it can then make a tweak in the universe, in that universe that it mapped out, and then it just enters into that tweak that it made, and it's actually real. And so that's how it does time travel and interdimensional travel. It just like imagines it. It's kind of like how the human brain works. You imagine something that's possible, and then you make it happen, and it happens, and it's real because you imagined it. So it was real just as soon as you imagined it. It's similar to that principle with the quantum computer. It imagines some new configuration with just a small steps into that, and it's real, and here you are. I know I don't understand exactly how it works, but that's basically how the mechanics of how time travel and interdimensional travel work. Time travel and interdimensional travel, it's the same thing. Like parallel universe travel and time travel, it's the same thing. Like when you travel back in time, you're not actually traveling back in your own timeline. You're just going to a very similar parallel universe, and then choosing the past of that, and then that's basically your version of going back in time. But it's similar enough that you can you're actually talking to something that's real, and then you can change that other universe. And so that's why there's some people say that's why you can see like the face on Mars and stuff. Like that's not even our past. That's actually a past of a parallel universe, some people can say. And if you ever like start suffering the Mandela effect, it's because you're actually dancing between parallel universe and you don't even know it. Like we all do that all the time. Like if you change your attitude and you suddenly lose weight, it's like you're going to a parallel universe. And so it's kind of like difficult to define exactly what time travel is, because it bleeds over. It overlaps with a lot of other concepts, like physical travel and parallel universes, and just traveling in your mind and stuff. So will there ever be a time when anybody can just travel around whenever? Yeah, that'll be when people are kind of halfway between the spirit world and the physical world. There's these little aliens called the Arcturians who live around Arcturus, which is a red giant star. So they've been around forever, because they've been around since before that was a red giant star. They've been around as a human since they were a regular star, and they just did go extinct, and then their star turns a red giant, gobbles up their planet. But it doesn't matter, because by then they had spaceships, and so now they just live in spaceships. So it's kind of ridiculous that Elon Musk is talking about how we need to colonize Mars before it's too late. Like, no, we need to colonize Mars before the sun turns into the Betelgeuse. But that's in like 3 billion years or something. We have a bunch of different tries to do civilization before and then restart. The thing that will take our time away is the sun. We have about 65 more attempts at civilization if you're talking about how long it took us to get from lemurs to humans since the dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. 65 million times 65 is about 3 billion. It's about how much longer we have for our sun, you know. And once the sun gobbles up the Earth, we're out of time. If we can't figure out how to get off the planet by then we lose. But so that's what happened with the Arcturians. So the Arcturians, they live in a physical environment in their spaceship like humans, you know, legs, arms, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But they can time travel. And because they can time travel on a whim, it's kind of like living in the spirit world, because that's the definition of the spirit world is that there's no time, right? And so they're basically in the spirit world, but they're humans and they react to us. So it's literally like halfway between the spirit world and physical world. And so when they evolve to their next level, they kind of become like Shiva, like how the Indians' idea of God, like some god who can literally fly all over the earth, the universe and everything. They'll become gods, and then just people who time travel. Maybe in the beginning because of their little smartwatches or whatever, super suits. But then that eventually melds into their bodies, and yeah, now you're a god, and maybe you can go and start your own civilization or universe or something like that. But there are not many life forms in the universe that are more advanced than the Arcturians, or like your typical like red giant star civilization. Like those guys compared to like evil aliens like the Anunnaki, aliens who fly around and use weapons and control. The Anunnaki is like a bug compared to an Arcturian. An Arcturian could vaporize the Anunnaki if they wanted to. They don't, because Anunnaki are humans. They're like, they're just like everybody else, just another civilization trying to survive. So, you know, like the Zeta or whatever. So they're not a threat, really, to anybody. Yeah, and they do, I think, live here under the earth. And so that's basically what time travel is. It's baby steps, you know. Like the Arcturians can't just jump in an Arcturian vessel and travel all over. They had to start from somewhere. And so yeah, the way that you start is from studying history, imagining history, and then imagining things that you want to make the future a better place, inventing them. You invent them, the future comes, and then you start imagining other situations and design those quantum computers and everything, and bada bing, voila, there you go. ChatGPT might be a good person to answer. I should ask some questions to them, but because it could even give you a timeline to it. But yeah, that's basically, man, I'm about to pass out. I'm going to go to sleep. That's basically my video about time travel. If you want to be a time traveler, I suggest studying history and testing your history so that you can feel like you're a boss player in history. And once you feel that boss play of history, could give you like the ambition. You know, you'll feel like it's your place because you've already accomplished this part of it. Now you're ready for the next step, which is to start predicting the future. And I have a website that facilitates that. My timeline has a future section, you know, and anybody and everybody could copy the code and put it on their site. And I was going to eventually do that, but we can all figure out how to predict the future if we all have future timelines, and we all write it, and then you get AI to go in there and tally up the average of what everybody says. That'll pretty much be the prediction. Those are our psychic powers coming back to life. Like the thing I was talking about the bull. 100 years ago, they had a bull, and they were like, how much does it weigh? And all the experts guessed. And then they had everybody guess, and then they took the averages from everybody, and the averages from everybody was better than the closest guess of the experts. And so if you get everybody to predict the future on their websites in an educated way, an intelligent way, like millions and millions of people, a certain like huge chunk of the population from all different walks of it, and then you get AI to go in there and just take the average of it, and then we all believe in that future if it's positive, and we all work toward it. That is the future. Like that's how you can predict the future. Make movies of it, and like that's basically time travel. You're not and if you want to actually physical travel in time, all you have to do is jump in a spaceship that zooms around the space for almost 99% the speed of light, and then you come back to the Earth and you've traveled in future and time. We already have future time travel figured out. We just don't have past time travel figured out. Past time travel is more. It uses a different mechanism. It's more. It has to use the power of the supercomputer, but it's also, possible. So the timeline could be pretty soon because the Earth is dying. Like we're running out of oil, and we're starting nuclear war, and we need help from aliens to get us to the next level without having a problem, which they are. They're defusing our nuclear weapons and stopping accidentally sent off nuclear weapons. And isn't it astonishing we haven't had a nuclear explosion accident since Hiroshima, with the exception of Chernobyl? Like, that's with the help of the aliens. If it had been for us, we would have had a bunch of these accidents already. I mean, we've had accidents with everything else. So oh shit, what was I talking about? So, yeah, it just tallies up. If you can tally up what everybody thinks, we can figure out, yeah. Oh man, I was gonna say something, but I forgot. So, yeah, that's time travel. The better off we're gonna be to have time travel is the more consensus we have, because if we all have like predicting the future, because if we all believe in something different, all of different people's different realities are going to be tugging at each other and not allowing the individual realities to grow, because they're still fighting it out with the other ones, and eventually one has to squash the other one. But once that happens and we're all thinking the same thing, we could all do that. What I said, make the websites where we predict everything, and it's all pretty much on a long line, and we figure out the future. And you can do the same thing with the past. Just have everybody judge and guess and use it democratically. So there's actually 3 different new forms of computing, 4 forms of computing. There's classical binary computing with the zeros and the ones. You have AI computing that goes and reads everything and compiles it together in an average. You have quantum computing, which takes averages of everything, so you can take the biggest volume. But then there's actually using humans as computers, where you just ask everybody, millions of people, and then you just take the averages, and they somehow have this magical connection to reality, to truth. So that's why everybody should do what I do and have like future timeline. I haven't even started really working on it yet, but all you have to do is copy the code and paste it on your site. But oh man, that's basically what I think about time travel. I think I've talked long enough. I am about to fall asleep, so I'm going to go lie down. I guess all this talking made me groggy enough to lie down, so that's fun. Alrighty, talk to you later.